we are continuing with Alien Week all week, and I'm very excited about my next guest, Nick Pope. You guys can find more information about him and what he's talking about at nickpope.net. Hey, Nick, welcome to my show.
Thank you. It's great to be on.
Thank you. So tell us about your work with the UK Ministry of Defence and how that turned into getting involved with UFO phenomenon.
Well, I worked for the Ministry of Defence for 21 years, and for much of the early 90s, I was posted to a division where it was my job to investigate and research the UFO phenomenon. So my job was to look at each of these cases, and particularly the ones where the witnesses were pilots, police officers, radar operators. In other words, where we had something just a little bit more than hearsay, particularly, as I say, when we had visual sightings backed up by radar and sometimes good photos and videos too.
You sound like you had the funnest job in the world.
Yes, it really was like the real-life X-Files, and because I did UFOs, obviously I got drawn into related mysteries like alien abductions, crop circles, anything weird, because there was nowhere else in government to send it.
And so when you got into this initially, were you kind of a believer in this, a skeptic? How did you go into it initially, and where are you now with your beliefs?
I was pretty skeptical. I thought it was all going to be aircraft lights, weather balloons, and some crazy people. And, there were a lot of aircraft lights and weather balloons, and there were some crazy people too. But I learned that it was foolish to throw out the baby with the bathwater, and there really were some, even though most of the cases could be explained as misidentifications, we had consistently over the years some really fascinating cases, some really good evidence. And now, of course, and I now live in the US, we're seeing exactly the same thing here. We're seeing, of course, these declassified videos of Navy jets chasing UFOs. We learn that there are briefings going on about this in Congress, in various committees there, and even the president has commented on this.
And we've seen former presidents talk about it too. Why are they disclosing it now? Why is the Navy coming out and saying, okay, fine, here's the videos. They are unidentified, flying objects, unexplained flying objects. Why now are they deciding to let us know about it?
Well, I think there's just been such a dramatic upsurge in the number of these encounters. And indeed, the U.S. Navy has gone on the record to say that since 2014, there's been a dramatic increase in what they call unauthorized incursions into restricted military airspace. So what we're looking at with these 3 Navy videos, that's just the tip of the iceberg. So many more pilots and radar operators are now seeing these things. It's almost getting to a sort of tipping point where it can't be denied any longer. And as I say, the Armed Services Committee is looking at this, the Homeland Security Committee, the Intelligence Committee. There's a lot going on.
There is. And do you remember there was a news story not that long ago, I'd say about 2 to 3 weeks ago, where the White House had to, be evacuated because there was something in the airspace. There wasn't a plane, but there was some type of something. Do you have any information on that?
I saw the story, but unfortunately I was away down in Brazil at the time on a speaking tour, so I didn't really have time to look into that with any of my sort of official contacts. But yeah, just the fact that something like this can happen in one of the most heavily monitored and defended pieces of airspace anywhere on the face of the planet. Whatever we think about UFOs, whether we think they're Russian, Chinese, Martian, that is of self-evident concern. It's whatever you believe. It's a defense and national security issue.
Right. And why do you think there's an uptick? Why do you think there's so many more sightings now?
I think it's 2 things. Firstly, our own technology is getting better in terms of the ability to detect these things, whether it's space telescopes or whether it's air defense radar systems. But the second thing is I think there's been an attitudinal change. A few years ago, if a pilot saw something like this, they would likely stay quiet because of the fear of ridicule or disbelief. But now there's such a groundswell. We've reached this tipping point that when the pilots see things and when the radar operators track them, there are so many other people now on the record that they say, yeah, it's time to speak out.
I mean, do you think there's going to be full disclosure coming where they really let us know what's going on? Because I know we don't know everything. They're definitely keeping things like technology and stuff like that. Do you think we'll ever have full disclosure, and why haven't we had it, if so?
Well, if you'll forgive me for a bureaucrat's answer, it kind of depends what there is to disclose. If there is literally, as some believe, a spaceship in a hangar, then absolutely, you could have that moment. My fellow Americans, people of the world, we're not alone. If the situation's slightly more kind of unclear, then we might not get anything more than we're getting now, a sort of tacit admission that yes, these things exist. Yes, we don't know what they are. They're in our airspace. The speeds and maneuvers reported by the pilots are ahead of anything we've got, but we can't quite nail it down. And if that's the situation, in one sense, there isn't much more to disclose. This subject has already come out of the fringe and into the mainstream in the last 2 years.
And what about the ufology world talking about how we've been in contact with alien species for a long time? I mean, would that be something that you think we can all handle? Or do they think that people would just lose their minds and go mad and cause major chaos, and we can't know yet because of that?
Well, some decades ago, there was this theory that one of the reasons it was being covered up was that there would be panic in the streets. I've seen no modern psychological research to suggest that that's true. In fact, quite the opposite. I think through all these stories coming out in the media, and indeed through science fiction films, now people are so used to the idea, not just of UFOs, but extraterrestrial entities, that if the government announced it tomorrow, I don't think there would be panic. I think a lot of people would say, I told you so.
Right. I think so too. And if we can handle the Kardashians and Kanye West, we can totally handle an alien species.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about alien abductions. Those kind of fascinate me. We've been hearing about those for a long time. You've studied people that have said they've been abducted by aliens. Are there some stories pretty similar? Are they consistent?
Yes, there are some similarities, both in terms of the entities that these people describe and the description of these medical or quasi-medical procedures that many of them report. Now, I don't know what's going on with this. I did look at alien abduction when I was at the Ministry of Defense. To be honest, though, we didn't get as many reports as we might have done. I think people were very reluctant about reporting to the government, often because, of course, these people believed that we already knew all about it and were part of the cover-up. So I didn't get as many cases as I got, for example, pilot cases. But it's a sad day when we start ignoring testimony, because testimony is at the heart, for example, of our entire criminal justice system. So something strange is happening to these people. I think there needs to be some more research. I know that the Pentagon's program, that was the existence of which was revealed a couple of years ago, did look at the physiological effects on people of close encounters. So I'm hoping that there's going to be some U.S. government documentation about this that will come out at some stage. But it's difficult because it sounds much more far out than pilots seeing something, for example.
You know, and when you talk about alien abductions and stuff, people always joke, including myself, and wonder why they're always talking about going up the bum. Like, if aliens have technology, why would, like, greater technology, why are they doing such weird experiments on humans?
Absolutely. It really doesn't make much sense, which is why we need some more research into this. And frankly, with the pilot sightings, one has things like radar tapes and photos and gun camera footage and things like that. With the abduction accounts, it's much more difficult from an evidential point of view. And what we really need is more research into sort of, blood work, DNA samples, that sort of thing. Again, our tech is getting better. We just need to take that leap of faith and say, I know it sounds crazy, but let's take a look at this.
Exactly. And then do you have a favorite story that's captured, in your mind that you're like, wow, that one really made me go, whoa?
Well, I think when it comes back to UFOs, we had a classic case in the UK in December 1980 in a place called Rendlesham Forest. And this was next to two U.S. Air Force bases, part of the U.S. presence in the UK. And this wasn't just lights in the sky. Something landed, and then afterwards, at the landing site, our scientific and technical experts recorded or assessed radioactivity levels as being significantly higher than the average background. So as I say, this was an actual landing. It took off again, so we don't have any wreckage in a hangar or something like that. But in evidential terms, this case was an absolute marvel.
And what about crop circles?
Oh, well, I'm not going to be popular here, but I'm a little bit of a crop circle skeptic, I have to say. I've seen it, it's not just two old boys with a piece of rope and a little piece of wire to keep everything straight. I've seen teams of people go out into the fields with night vision goggles and satellite navigation, things like that. So I'm a little bit of a crop circle skeptic. But you know what? I mean, it's the same as the UFOs and the abductions. The skeptics have to be right every day with this, but the believers only need to be right once. So I guess only you don't need to prove a whole bunch of these things. Only one needs to be the real deal, and we really are in game-changing, paradigm-busting territory.
Now, the British government is in the process of declassifying and releasing its entire archive of UFO files. That's correct, right? And how many files are there?
Well, there were over 200 files, but each file could contain several hundred pages. So, in fact, we just finished that. And I say we. I was asked to come out of retirement to help advise and promote some of this. There were 60,000 pages of documents on this, some of which were classified up to secret UK eyes only, so very high levels of material. A lot of routine cases in there, but some fabulous documents talking about, our internal discussions, where those of us responsible for this were frankly saying, what the heck is going on in our airspace? And could any of this be extraterrestrial? And we absolutely didn't rule it out. So those files are out there now.
And if one does, let's say, that, okay, fine, there's UFOs and they've been here, but why haven't they taken over if they have better technology than us, if they're smarter than us, if they've got more abilities than us? Why haven't they just said, we are dominating you now?
Well, I think any civilization with the technology to travel between the stars isn't going to come here all the way just to steal our water and gold, because there'll be easier and cheaper ways of doing it.
True.
Just taking it from elsewhere in the universe. So I think that's a hopeful sign. We're probably not going to have an alien invasion. What we might have is what we might find we're dealing with is scientists and anthropologists doing exactly the same that we'll do as
right.
we take our first steps out into space. We're explorers.
We're the rats in the
we
cage.
want to know what's out there.
Exactly. Totally. We're basically zoo animals or lab rats, if you will, for them. So where can we find more information? And if people are into this, where do we go?
Well, the national archives of various nations, whether it's US, UK, all around the world, a lot of governments are declassifying and releasing material on this. I have some links on my nickpope.net website. There's a lot of resources out there. The trouble is, of course, there is some kind of crazy stuff out there too. Let's not kid ourselves. So the problem with this subject is always trying to pick out the signal amidst the noise. But there is some great information out there. But I would start with the government archives and look, just follow this still unfolding story of the Pentagon's ATIP program. 2 years ago, the U.S. government said we don't investigate UFOs. Then the New York Times did this story on the ATIP program. Congress got involved. The 3 Navy videos are out there. And this story is still running. New revelations almost every week on this.
And did you call it the ATIP? What is that? Did you say
ATIP, yes.
Okay.
Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Very, very clever. A UFO program that didn't mention anything about UFOs in its title. So the implication is that it's all about next generation aviation threats to the U.S. But when you look at what it actually did, they were studying things like anti-gravity, invisibility, warp drive, and wormholes. And this is, none of this is disputed. This is the Defense Intelligence Agency's letter to the U.S. Congress on this.
Wow. It's all so fascinating. I can't wait to see where we go next with this. Nick Pope, keep up the great work. You guys want more information, go to his website. He has great links, nickpope.net. Thank you so much for enlightening us today. It was really fun talking to you, Nick.